think loops and a light is something that's really good to invest in. A microscope is obviously amazing because we see about 10 times magnification when you use a microscope, sometimes even up to about 25 times. So it's, a microscope is amazing, but if you have good loops and light, you can do most root canal treatment with that. So if we have a look here, I've just removed the caries and we can see that there's been an exposure of the pulp here. So I'm just going to enlarge this access now. So I'm using a DG16 probe, which is a lot sharper and a lot longer. So it's very good for detecting canal orifices and also just dropping into the pulp chamber. I'm now switching to an Endo Z burr, which is a non-end cutting burr. So now that we've dropped into the pulp chamber, we don't really want to damage the floor of the pulp chamber, so we can use this to quite safely enlarge without sort of causing any damage. So I can see here we've got the palatal canal. So we're going to have the mesiobuccal and distobuccal canal coming across on this side. Very much in terms of access, traditional accesses we looked for a lot of landmarks, but for more conservative access cavities, which is a lot better for teeth because we preserve more tooth structure, I tend to modify the access just according to what I need. So I'll enlarge slightly, I'll check if I've got reasonable straight line access to the canal, and then I'll sort of enlarge a little bit more. So access is more of a process, it's more of just a refinement throughout the procedure. And again, then I'm just going to have a little look, see where we are. In this case, we have, we can see here, a pulp stone in the canal, which we can see just here. So you can see it's actually moving. So we can just tend to flick that out. Pulp stones sometimes occur if a tooth had a long-standing inflammation for a while, and the pulp tissue will tend to lay down more tooth tissue to protect itself, which makes root canal a little bit more difficult sometimes. So I'm just going to flick this out. We can see it coming out now. So on an X-ray, we could see here, that's the pulp stone. 1 second. It's quite a large pulp stone in this case. Just so yeah, from before we can usually tell on the X-ray. We could see here there was calcification in the pulp, so I was expecting there to be something there. It just looks like a slight haziness when we're in there. And again, we want to make sure we flick them out. Normally I flick them out using ultrasonics, which are really good just to make them mobile and flick out. Then before we take any files into the pulp chamber and into the canals, we really want to flood the coronal aspect of the pulp in with sodium hypochlorite to disinfect it, because otherwise we can push bacteria up into the canals, which can result in a flare-up for the patient after the treatment. So about 5% of people have a flare-up after root canal treatment. But we can try and minimise that by really disinfecting coronally prior to taking files further in, because otherwise we get this hydraulic effect where bacteria is being pushed down the canal and potentially through the apex. You'll notice during my treatment I use a lot of sodium hypochlorite, so this is almost a full syringe that I put into the pulp chamber before I even take anything down there. So we're quite lucky in this case because we've got 4 walls, so this distal wall hasn't really been compromised. But normally if it has, so we've got a DO restoration here, I would tend to rebuild this back wall up with composite. So I would put on a matrix band, put on put a little bit of cavit or any sort of temporary material that can be scaled out into the pulp chamber, and then rebuild that back wall up in composite or GIC, and that would give us 4 walls, so that basically you get a pool of irrigant in the inside when we do root canal treatment. So all our files are passing through the pool of irrigant, carrying sodium hypochlorite into the canals. It's also really great because we then don't get leakage of hypochlorite into the mouth, which you can get very, quite easily if you've got a DO restoration, because the rubber dam doesn't sit very well there. It provides good stability for our temporary restorations if we're doing things in 2 visits. And prevents saliva also leaking into your access cavity and contaminating things. So we call it a pre-endodontic restoration. And I used to think it, took a lot of time initially during treatment, but actually we now know, afterwards it's just a very small occlusal filling that you're doing. So although you spend more time initially, you save time at the end.